let's jump right into it. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the source material behind a truly fascinating and, honestly, deeply complex economic story. You see, every few years, almost like clockwork, Pakistan finds itself standing right at the edge of the exact same financial cliff. The warning signs just start flashing red. The rupee weakens, inflation skyrockets, businesses literally can't plan for tomorrow, and everyday families just watch the prices of fuel, electricity, and basic groceries climb higher and higher. It's a completely predictable economic cycle, and it leads to a very predictable outcome. Right. And there it is. You've probably seen this breaking news headline a dozen times. It's become this familiar, almost comforting ritual. Whenever this headline hits, you usually have a new government promising a massive economic revival. And the markets, well, they respond with cautious optimism. For a little bit, confidence is actually restored, and the immediate panic fades away. But inevitably, yep, sooner or later, the national conversation circles right back to those exact same three letters, IMF. So the crucial question we have to ask is, why? Why has Pakistan sought IMF assistance more than 20 times? I mean, 20 times. That is just a staggering number. Is it simply because the country's poor? Is corruption the whole story here? Or are these recurring crises actually symptoms of a much deeper structural problem? To really understand this, we have to look way beyond today's news cycle. We need to look at an economic loop that has literally repeated itself for over 6 decades.
Section 1, A Promising Beginning, the 1947 Starting Line. Now, when Pakistan first emerged as an independent nation in 1947, it had immense potential, but it severely lacked capital, so they had to borrow. In the beginning, the focus was purely on just surviving and building up basic institutions. But by the 1960s, that early strategy of foreign borrowing, it looked like it was working flawlessly. I mean, Pakistan was experiencing one of the fastest periods of economic growth in all of Asia. Factories were expanding, agricultural output was spiking, massive infrastructure projects were getting done. It was the ultimate emerging economic success story. But, kind of hidden beneath those incredible statistics, a really dangerous imbalance was quietly taking shape.
Section 2, The Dollar Shortage Mystery, Rupees versus Dollars.
Okay, so there is a massive misconception we need to clear up right off the bat. Most people assume a country goes to the IMF because it runs out of money. But here's the thing. Pakistan rarely runs out of rupees. What it runs out of is US dollars. And that distinction changes absolutely everything. To really wrap our heads around this, just imagine for a second that you own a highly successful factory. Your products are literally flying off the shelves. On the domestic side, your business is absolutely booming. You pay your employees in rupees, and your customers, they pay you in rupees. But on the flip side of that, every single machine, every imported spare part, every drop of fuel you need to actually run that factory has to be bought using US dollars. If you run out of dollars, production just halts. You can't just print more US dollars, right? Now take that factory and scale it up to the size of an entire country. Pakistan needs dollars to buy crude oil, natural gas, medicines, industrial machinery, the whole shebang. So when foreign exchange reserves shrink, that vital financial lifeline gets completely cut off.
Section 3, The Balance of Payments, a cycle hidden in plain sight.
This right here is the true diagnosis of this recurring disease. It's all about the balance of payments. Basically, Pakistan earns its foreign currency, its dollars in, through exports, remittances sent home by overseas Pakistanis, and foreign investment. But it spends massive amounts of dollars. It's dollars out, importing energy, chemicals, tech, and paying back old external debts. The problem? For decades, the dollars flowing out have consistently, repeatedly exceeded the dollars flowing in. At first, that gap might be manageable by taking on some debt, but here is exactly how it rapidly spirals out of control. Step 1, an unexpected external shock hits. Let's say global oil prices suddenly surge. Boom, suddenly your imports cost way more. Step 2, your dollar reserves fall rapidly to cover that difference. Step 3, because dollars are now super scarce, the rupee weakens dramatically. That makes imports even more expensive, which causes domestic inflation to absolutely spike. And finally, step 4, you hit a full-blown balance of payments crisis. Normal sources of financing just vanish, and the country finds itself teetering right on the brink of default.
Section 4, The Emergency Room, the IMF's true role. And that is exactly when the sirens start blaring and we enter the emergency room. Now, the IMF is highly misunderstood. It isn't just handing out free emergency cash, and it's definitely not some cartoon villain plotting to destroy the economy. It is literally a strict lender of last resort. By definition, an IMF agreement is emergency financial assistance that requires governments to implement strict economic reforms. The IMF operates like a bank that wants to make absolutely sure you can actually pay them back. So they demand conditions: fix your tax collection, reduce your budget deficits, and slash those really costly government subsidies. Now, on paper, sure, this is sound economics. But in practice, it translates directly to higher electricity bills and new taxes. So for everyday citizens who are already being crushed by inflation, this doesn't feel like a rescue operation. It feels like a severe punishment.
The absolute crucial difference to understand here is between emergency treatment and long-term recovery. The IMF steps in to stop the financial bleeding and stabilize those dollar reserves. The immediate panic fades. But true long-term recovery, that requires the difficult, painful physical therapy of domestic structural reform. What we've historically seen in Pakistan is that once the immediate bleeding stops, the motivation to actually do that grueling physical therapy just completely vanishes.
Section 5. The chronic disease. Structural problems that never disappear. So if the emergency reforms are supposedly designed to fix the problem, why does the patient keep ending up back in the hospital? Well, it's because of these stubborn, much deeper domestic weaknesses that constantly drag the economy backward, regardless of who's in power. First, you've got a really narrow export base that heavily relies on textiles. That makes the whole economy incredibly vulnerable to shifts in global demand. Then, you've got massive tax collection gaps because of a huge informal economy. Add to that immense pressures in the energy sector leading to circular debt, which is basically this massive, tangled accumulation of unpaid bills across the power grid. And finally, constant policy reversals. Look, real reform takes years to work, but governments change, priorities shift, and suddenly you're right back to square one.
Section 6. Breaking the eternal cycle. Treatment versus full recovery. The good news? Full recovery is absolutely possible. Countries like South Korea, Indonesia, and Turkey have all used IMF emergency assistance during their own severe crises to eventually transform their institutions, expand their exports, and fix their tax systems. But, as our source material perfectly highlights, loans alone never transformed an economy. Sustained reforms did. An IMF bailout is really just a window of opportunity. It buys you some time to rebuild reserves and restore market confidence. But the IMF cannot build a resilient economy on behalf of another country. That immense responsibility falls entirely on the country itself.
So I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought. The next time you see the breaking news that Pakistan has signed another IMF agreement, don't just ask how much money was borrowed. Instead, ask yourself, will this just be another temporary rescue, or is this the moment the cycle finally breaks? Because the ultimate answer to that question won't be written by the IMF in Washington. It will be written by domestic choices made long, long after the ink is dried. Thanks for joining me on this explainer of the source material. I really hope this helped you see the bigger picture beyond the headlines.